Hello everyone, it's Hunter and welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, it is so nice to meet you. Today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my October reading wrap up. I feel like the vibes in this room right now are so cozy. I have my lamp on back there and it's also just like pretty dark outside because it's been raining all day and I'm currently filming this on Halloween, so it just feels very like cozy, if you know what I mean. But I am currently sitting in the floor of my office. I have a few physical books that I read this past month and I also have a couple of books that I read on my Kindle, so I just wanted to share. Also, if you'll notice, I have some books back here that are turned around like spine pages out, so the spine is facing the wrong way, and this is my way of kind of showing myself how many unread books I have on my shelf so that way I can read them because I do a really bad job. I will buy books all the time, but I don't read the ones I have, so this is my motivation to read the ones I have so I can turn them around the correct way. So if you stand that and you're wondering what's going on, that's why. So with that being said, before we get started, I'd love it if you guys would subscribe to my channel. With that being said, let's just go ahead and get started because this is gonna take forever if I don't. So the first book that I read this month actually comes out on November 1st, which is actually already passed when this video goes live, but it's called Meredith Alone. And I got to read this book as an advanced reader's copy through NetGalley, and I was very reluctant to read it at first, but I genuinely loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars for sure. It is about a woman, Meredith, who she kind of had some traumatic things happen to her in the past, and she has slowly and more become more and more reclusive, but she just has not left her house in 3 years. So the book goes back and forth between her recounting events in her life that have kind of led up to this moment, and she's counting the number of days that she has been isolating herself. She has a friend that comes to her house and that's pretty much the only person she sees. She has her groceries delivered, she works from home, and again, she just is very isolated and lives alone. But she slowly throughout the book kind of learns how to overcome her trauma and she slowly makes her way back into the world. She also has someone new come to visit her house, which also helps her to kind of open up a little bit more and heal. And I think the reason I thought this was so good was because a lot of books that I've read where the main character is isolating themselves, they're typically ones that are people watchers. They stare out the window, they're focused on the outside world without actually going into the outside world. And not only is Meredith not focused on the outside world, she doesn't even realize what she's missing, but she goes to therapy, which I think is important to normalize. But also as she progresses and she heals, she also sometimes she takes a step backward. For every 2 steps forward, she takes a step backward, and she kind of beats herself up over it, but then eventually she kind of learns that healing is not linear and it does not always go straight up. Sometimes you can have really good days and sometimes you're not gonna have some great days. And I personally have never dealt with the things that Meredith's character has dealt with, but I do think that it does a great job of showing the progression of healing and also what it's like to overcome your mental health. Not overcome, but kind of learn how to manage it and take care of yourself in that way, while also realizing that taking a step backward is not always the end of the world. I do want to give some trigger warnings on this one. There's some essay, there is self-harm with suicidal ideations and depression, and I feel like there was one more. I think it's just those 2, essay and self-harm with suicidal ideations. So if that's something that you need to stay away from, then don't read this book, but if you don't need to stay away from it, I highly recommend this book. The next one I read was actually one that was a very quick read. I wouldn't call it a novella because it was more than 100 pages, but it was, the Kindle edition only has 163 pages, and I gave this 5 stars. The average rating on Goodreads is 3.98, but because it's so short, the story does move very quickly. It did not take me long to read this at all. Basically, we have this woman, she gets fired from her job and she is desperate to find a way to pay her rent. So when the guy who got her fired from her job offers to pay her to pretend to be his fiance, she takes it. They have to go on a camping trip, which is why it's called Not Happy Campers. This is an enemies to lovers / forced proximity. I really like this one because it is a closed door romance, and I love closed door romance. I think that I love when they leave everything to the imagination because you can imagine as much or as little as you want to. And I thought this was just a really cute, quick read, and it was a great little palate cleanser after the heaviness of the book that I read read before. So that was a very quick read, very cute, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne, and I had never heard of this book until one day I was just browsing the book section at Goodwill and I saw someone had an advanced reader's copy and they donated it to Goodwill, and I was about to buy it, but then I was like, I have like $1 so I can only buy one book, because I was going by the cash that was in my wallet and there was a different book that I wanted to buy more. But then when I went to California in September, I went to a bookstore and they had this as a blind date with the book. For some reason they had it marked as a used book. It was only $5. This book came out at the beginning of September, so it's definitely not a used book. In fact, it was brand new when I bought it. It's a little beat up now, and it took me kind of forever to read it because I just kept reading other stuff on my Kindle. But we have this person, her name is Angelica Frankenstein, and you guys know that the original Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein is the name of the scientist, not the monster. And so Angelica Frankenstein, she is a Frankenstein from the line of that monster, and not the monster, the creator of those monsters. So her and her brother Victor are trying to bring people to life after they've died. So Angelica is trying to find a suitor for herself because she has kind of exhausted all of the people in her town. This is historical romance. So she brings this guy to life and she is trying to piece together what the guy, she calls him Will. So she's created this guy named Will and she is trying to piece together what his life was like before he died. And I thought it was really cute because Angelica has lots of character development. You learn a lot about Will and I thought it was a really fun story. It was very different, so 5 out of 5 for me. The next book I read was, actually it was an audiobook, so I listened to this one. It was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, and this one, the tagline says, "Can you stop a murder after it's already happened? Late October, after midnight, you're waiting up for your 17-year-old son. He's late. As you watch through the window, he emerges and you realize he isn't alone. He's walking to a man and he's armed. You can't believe when you see him do it. Your funny, happy teenage son. He kills a stranger right there on the street outside your house." So this was an interesting one, but basically we have this woman, she witnesses her son murder someone, and then the next morning she wakes up and it is the day before the murder happens, and she basically goes back in time as many times as she needs to on days that are significant, seeing what she can change about the past to prevent her son from committing this murder, which is crazy. I thought the concept was really weird. I was like, how far is she gonna go back? And she's wondering that as well. This was very different from like time travel, if that makes sense. I don't know, but I thought the concept was really interesting. I really liked it, and I liked how you can kind of see how every tiny little thing that you do has a consequence, even if you don't realize it, and I thought it was really good. So 5 out of 5 for me. The next book was one that I found to be super cute. It is Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison, and this is book number 1 of the Love Light Farms series. I actually read the second book first without realizing it. It was called In the Weeds and I really liked the cover, so I decided to read it. But this one is the first one, and we have Stella, who is the owner of this tree farm in this super cute place. Inglewild is the name of the town that they live in. It's this tiny town in the middle of nowhere, and the tree farm is not doing well. So she decides to sign up for this influencer competition, and this influencer is gonna come and be judging basically her place along with a bunch of other different smaller businesses, and then the winner of her competition wins prize money, and she's hoping that she can use that prize money to kind of turn the place around because, like I said, she's in financial trouble. Well, she lied in her application and said that she had a boyfriend, and so she recruits her best friend Luca to be her boyfriend. And little does he know little does Luca know that Stella has harbored feelings for him for pretty much their entire decade-long friendship, and he is more than willing to pretend to be her boyfriend because he also has been harboring feelings for her. This is Best Friends to Lovers, and I personally, that is my favorite trope. I just think it's the sweetest one, and a lot of people love Enemies to Lovers, but Best Friends to Lovers is my absolute favorite, and I just thought it was so cute. 5 out of 5 for me. I think it's so cute, and I'm currently reading Mixed Signals, which is the 3rd book in the series, and so far it's really cute. The next book I read on my Kindle, and it's called The Cabin by Natasha Preston, and I gave this one 4 stars out of 5. I feel like I've given every one of her books 4 stars, but I need to read the description. So we have Mackenzie and a group of her friends are going to a cabin for the weekend. It belongs to her best friend's boyfriend's parents. She does not like her best friend's boyfriend, but she wants to hang out with the rest of her friends. So she goes on this trip and she wakes up the next morning and 2 people have been murdered. And so her and all of the people in the cabin are suspects, and they have to try to figure out who the killer is and also try to clear their own names. And I give it 4 stars just because I feel this is a YA, by the way. This is YA thriller. And sometimes I feel like YA thrillers can seem incredibly immature. And I do have to put myself in the mindset that like it's young adult, so the characters are going to be a little bit more immature than the characters in just regular adult thriller. However, there are books that I've seen do YA thriller really, really well. And I just feel like all of these books get 4 stars for me because there's always something that either doesn't make sense to me or just like it just doesn't get 5 stars for me. In my way of rating, I typically start with 5 stars and then I dock points off from there rather than starting at 1 and working my way up. So my rating system is a little bit skewed sometimes, but the overall Goodreads on this is 3.62. So it's not the worst. I thought it was a cute story, but sometimes there's just something about it that is not 100% for me. So that was The Cabin. Also this past month I've been not only trying to get through my physical TBR, but I've also been trying to get through my Kindle reads because I've had books sitting on my Kindle for what feels like years and I need to read them. So the next book was from Kindle Unlimited and it is That Swoony Feeling by Megan Quinn, and this is the last book in the Getting Lucky series. I'd say that Megan Quinn books are typically on the spicier end. At least they're about as much spice as I can handle. I'd say they're like a 3 out of 5 on the spicy scale, and I prefer 1 and 2 more than 3, 4, 5, but I can handle 3 rather than 4 and 5. So her books tend to be on the spicier side, but this series is definitely not as spicy as her other books. So I really appreciate this. But That Swoony Feeling is about the youngest brother out of the 4. His name is Brig and he wants love so badly. He has always just wanted someone to love, someone to call his own. Brothers were not looking for love and they found it, and he's so jealous of them and how they are having families and just living life with the person that they love, and that is pretty much all he wants. And so he kind of is blinded to the fact that there is this girl in town who has basically been in love with him for as long as she's known him, and they start to spend a lot of time together because their businesses are next door to each other. He's helping her renovate her business and no one really can see that she's totally obsessed with him and that he's completely in love with her too, but it is so cute. This I think was probably my favorite one of the 4 just because Brig is like the cutest, the sweetest little character ever, but I give this one 5 stars because I just thought it was so cute. I really have to hurry up if this video is not going to be 400 years long. The next book I read was It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the second book in the It Ends With Us series, and there's not going to be another one, but this book came out on October 18th and I read it on October 18th. I also did a reading vlog for this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. Let's just say I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. If you guys want to read my full review of this book, then I will link it on either side or whatever up here of my review of this book. So that's all I'm going to say for that one. The next book I read was also on my Kindle and it's called 7 Dirty Secrets from Natalie D. Richards. This is one of those, this is another one of those YA thrillers, and this author for some reason just always I give 4 stars to. Basically it says that each person has a different secret. There are 7 total. We have Cleo, who lost her boyfriend the year before in an accident, and on the anniversary, the death of him, but also on her birthday, someone starts sending her different what's the word I'm looking for? Sending her different messages. That's basically a scavenger hunt that she has to solve in order to keep her secrets about her ex-boyfriend, her dead boyfriend, to keep him to keep someone from sharing her secrets and like the circumstances around his death. So the book is basically her scavenger hunt, and I thought it was really interesting. This was probably one of her better books. Some of her books make absolutely no sense to me because they're just like things that, I don't know, some of her books just like don't make sense to me. So this was definitely one of the better ones in my opinion, but I was a fan. 4 stars for me. And now we move on to the last 3 books I read this month. Okay, so the next one is a physical copy, and this was given to me as an art from HarperCollins, and this one was actually so good. It is called The Escape Artist by Jonathan Friedland. It says the man who broke out of Auschwitz to warn the world. It's basically about a man called, his name Rudolf Verba, and he was a Jew who went to Auschwitz during its time as a concentration camp slash death camp, and it highlights this is a nonfiction book, so it did take me a bit longer to read it simply because it's nonfiction and lots of the names and places are not in English, so I had a hard time with those. But it's broken up into 5 parts. The preparations, so kind of the start of the Jews being displaced from their homes, and kind of how he got to Auschwitz. So that was the beginning, and then there's actually part 2 is while he was at Auschwitz. Part 3 was about his escape. Part 4 is about the report. So him and the other person that escaped with him, they sit down with a writer who they make a report, the Auschwitz report, letting the world know what happened. And part 5 is The Shadow, and that's about how being in Auschwitz kind of affected his life going forward. So I thought it was incredible. I can't really give this a star rating simply because it is about someone's life. It is autobiographical but also nonfiction. It was heartbreaking and devastating, but so important because it really gives you behind the scenes look at what it was like to be a Jew in Auschwitz. And like I said, it was heartbreaking. Nonfiction is not typically my cup of tea, but this was so good and I highly recommend. The next book that I read is Everything After by Jill Santopolo, I think is how you pronounce it. It's about, I can never remember characters' names. Honestly, I never ever can remember them. Emily. Okay, so in the beginning we have Emily, and she wants to be a mother. She gets pregnant in the beginning of the book. Trigger warning, miscarriage and fertility issues. She gets pregnant, and when she gets pregnant, it reminds her of the first time she was pregnant when she was young and in love with a musician. Based on her feelings surrounding her miscarriage and her past, she kind of reconnects with the musician that she was in love with when she was young, when she was in college, and she kind of has to decide if she wants to pursue a career in music with her ex, and also if she wants to pursue a relationship with him, or if she wants to fight for her marriage, and kind of figuring out what she wants out of life while also figuring out what she wants out of a romantic relationship. I feel like that description was pretty vague, but I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a really quick read. I'm currently pregnant, so reading about pregnancy loss was, it kind of gave me some anxiety. However, I feel like it's important to read about that kind of thing because it happens so often that people don't talk about it. I've never experienced that before, but I know lots of people who have experienced it, and I know that it's incredibly devastating. So just reading the innermost thoughts of a character who has dealt with something like that is incredibly difficult. But again, I think it's important because of how often it happens, and it tends to be a pretty taboo subject. I also think that it was a really good story because it helps her to find herself. She kind of lost herself when she lost her ex and everything surrounding that situation. And I feel like her coming back to herself was a really important self-discovery that she made. But I also appreciate the decisions that she made at the end a lot. So with that being said, I gave that 5 stars and I highly recommend it. And the very last book that I read in October was The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. This is the second book in the Spanish Love Deception series, and we have Rosie, who is Lena's best friend in the first book, and Lena's cousin is Lucas. Rosie's ceiling falls on her, basically. It crashes out of nowhere, so she goes and she stays at Lena's apartment while Lena's on her honeymoon, and she doesn't know that Lena has promised her apartment to her cousin Lucas. So they're sharing the space. They also decide that Rosie, who's a romance writer, needs to get some romance in her life so that she can learn, so she can have some inspiration for a book that she is writing. So her and Lucas decide to be fake dating experiment type thing, and we all know what happens with fake dating. They become the best of friends, but also fake dating. I think I liked this one better than the Spanish Love Deception, and I actually really did like the Spanish Love Deception. I personally love a slow burn, and that's what this was. Has a little bit of spicy, but like very minimal, so it's like really easy to like skip over the spicy and not like really miss any plot points, but I really enjoyed it. I got this when it came out and I just now got around to reading it, but I really enjoyed it. I loved Rosie, I loved Lucas, and I don't know, I thought it was really cute. So I gave it 5 stars. So I think that's 12 books that I read in October. I really enjoyed every one of them, and if you guys have read any of these, let me know what you thought of them, and please let me know what you read in October because I'd love to check them out. I will still be working on that physical TBR that I made at the beginning of October. I'm still working on those books very much. Like, I'm just trying to get through the spooky season books before we hit up the holiday season. But yeah, that's all I have for today's video. So if you guys enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below and give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!